Yeah, we're live. I'm going to turn this light off, I think. I think this is going to help. That's better. A little better mood lighting. So, how's everybody doing? Tonight, we're going to talk about the video that I just put up today, and that was the 400 Pontiac modifications, which everybody seems to like the Pontiac power, Go Poncho power. Also, it's QJet stuff, so people seem to be really liking QJet power, and you get the guys that there's always the comments where guys are saying, "Oh, QJet's the best carburetor ever. It's as good as fuel injection," and people just don't know how to tune it. And all the Holly guys don't know what's up, and they just don't understand Quadrajets. Otherwise, they would like them better, and it doesn't have to be one or the other. And there's ways to get both of them to do really cool stuff. Each of them have their pluses and minuses, and there's stuff that you would choose one for maybe over the other, and then the other one for other things. So, it's just like choosing Ford or Chevy, whatever. All of it's good, and we can make lots of power with all the stuff. So, as people have proven time and time again, they've done stuff with QJets, they've done stuff with Hollies, they've done thermoquads, carburetors, EDELBROCks, whatever you want. If a guy puts enough time and effort into it, pretty good chance they can make fairly decent power. Because really, all you have to do is get the air, fuel, and timing right on the motor, and it will make good power. There's a little bit more to it with the carburetors, which is really cool. And I found out that through testing that even if we provide the same air fuel with two different carburetors, sometimes the power is different, even though the air fuel is the same, which is really kind of cool testing. But I'm looking forward to more Pontiac testing, not on that particular 400, because now that one is going away and going into the vehicle. So hopefully she's happy, and I want to see what I really like is a ride in the car when it's done. I just want to, or to drive it around the block or whatever, just because you like to see stuff completed like that. So the testing on what did you guys think about testing on the Quadrajet? Simple metering, simple metering rod change on the Quadrajet, richened everything up, and as usual, what happens with jetting or metering rods, despite the fact that I get people that tell me all the time, "Oh yeah, you can adjust that air fuel curve, and you can do stuff at particular engine speeds." I just have never seen anybody be able to do it. I want them to be able to do it. I want that to be a reality. But when you do a jet change or when you do a metering rod change, usually there's like this global thing that happens. It goes like, okay, this is what it looked like, and now this is what it looked like, and all it is just richer or leaner depending on which way you went with the jetting or the air bleeds or whatever it is you change. I've never been able to take power away at 3,500 and not have it do something somewhere else. You can do that with fuel injection, but you can't do that or at least I haven't seen people be able to do that with a carburetor and have it not affect something somewhere else. Usually that does. And in this case, that didn't really matter. When we richened it up, it made power everywhere. And even though in the mid 11s might seem to be a little rich for a lot of people, when we tried then leaning it out at the expense of the front part of it, the beginning part of the curve being too lean, even when we tried that, it just didn't want to make more power. That's where it wanted to be. So we can have an argument or a discussion, depending on which one of those you like, about why that's the case. And a lot of times, if you look at lots of different intake manifolds, fuel injector manifolds, or carburetor manifolds, and you look at the air fuel distribution on those, you'll see that it's not anywhere near even. It can vary by 1.5 points or 2 points sometimes. So sometimes what you do is when you richen it up, some of the cylinders become too rich because they were already good. Some of them become too rich, and then some of them come into line. So what can happen is that you can gain power from the ones that you put where they should be, and then you've lost power from the ones that are richer than they should be, and now you just have a kind of a net neutral situation from changing the jetting like that. But it makes me feel better to have it richer like that. I wouldn't want to run it at 15.5 to 1 at wide open throttle. That just wouldn't be a good deal. And also after we did that, the metering change, the wide open throttle stuff was good. And then the primary stuff was already good. And the idle stuff and the transition, because we adjusted the arm on the squirter and the air door. And so all that, the carburetor just ran really good for that application, not surprisingly, because that's the one that was designed for. So the engineers at the OEM level put a lot of time and effort into it. So it did pretty well. And all we had to do was adjust it a little bit for, maybe because we had headers on it, or we had, this was a different set of cylinder heads for that particular short block. So, but it all worked out really good. But what about the EDELBROCK intake manifold test? Let's hear some comments about that. I thought it was interesting. I like the EDELBROCK intake manifold a lot better than the cast iron one, just because I had to lift both of them, and lifting the iron one. And I'm sure people are going to talk about the FE one being a lot heavier, and it is a lot heavier. But still, an iron intake manifold, that Pontiac version would be much better if it was made out of aluminum. Then it would be the best of both worlds, and it would have more power. But then the question becomes, is I'm sure that the EDELBROCK guys also did their homework and wouldn't have designed a manifold that makes less power than the factory one. I'm sure that they tested that. At least I'm hoping that they did. I mean, they're really good at what they do, so I'm sure that they would have tested that. So what it makes me think is that the application that we tested it on, it might like the stock one, which again, like the stock carburetor, doesn't surprise me, because the guys that designed the stock one designed it to work really well with the stock one. Obviously, they knew what they were doing back then, and designed a really good intake manifold. But I wonder if this is a situation where we had, more camshafts, and even an 068 cam or something, which I don't think this one had. I think it might have made a little bit more power if it did. If it would have had more camshaft, even an aftermarket cam, and we would have run it and done the test there, I wonder if we would have saw something. I wonder if the intake, if the EDELBROCK would have started to come into its own, or maybe made more power. I don't know. I haven't done enough Pontiac testing to know if that's the case. I will be testing maybe that manifold. I think that they might also have a torquer there at EDELBROCK. I don't know if it has as much dust as that one does. And then also an RPM. So we'll test those. I just got to get my hands on an RPM. So we'll try to test all those, because I'll be doing wilder combinations than this is, essentially kind of stock version. So we'll do combinations that make a lot more power. We'll step it up in succession. So we'll have to put together, maybe we'll start with the 350 and then get a little bit wilder in the 400, whatever. I'd like to also, we talked about that last night about the trophy 4-cylinder, so that's still up for grabs. And then I've got a good poll for tonight about the Nova, so we'll get that going in just a little bit. The oil system test that I did, where we changed the level, was interesting because it made a dramatic change in the oil pressure curve. And it was interesting that it still had kind of enough oil pressure. If you have 55 pounds or so at 5,500, that's pretty good. But I didn't like the fact that when we took the oil, because I thought bringing the oil level down, taking oil out of the pan, a lot of times cures problems. So in the big blocks and stuff, we cure windage problems. I think maybe the Pontiac, and I don't know this because I'm not a Pontiac expert, maybe the Pontiac was suffering from oil drain, or this one also could have had the pickup maybe too high. I didn't ever put the pan or anything on. This was all together when I got it, so I didn't measure that. Could have had, the bypass could have been sticking there. There are a couple of things that I would have looked at to try to find out whether or not we could change the fluctuation in the oil pressure. But it did want to run better and have a more consistent curve through most of the RPM range with more oil in it. So I'm okay with that. We always go more before we go less. Just like with timing, you would want to go less. And just like with air fuel, you want to go richer before you go leaner, see which direction it likes. And that way, that that's the safe zone, especially if, for instance, you don't have a mark on your damper and you don't know where you are and you didn't TDC the thing. And well, the first thing, let's try less timing and see what happens. Oh, look, it makes a lot more power and it's not detonating. That's the kind of thing that you do. You don't just try more, you don't just go leaner. So I always try the safe route first, and then you can go up from there. Make sure everything is right. So that was the testing on the Pontiac, which I really liked. It was kind of cool. It was nice running, a Pontiac and being able to actually do things and change a few things, even though we didn't do camshafts and stuff, which we will do coming up on the next one, I'm sure. And I'm kind of anxious to try a 350. I would really like to put together a reproduction of an HO 350 if I'm able to, with using the one that might be coming out of that car that I can use for testing, I'm sure. And I may even just buy it from her. So I can put it together and do anything that I want with it. But it would be cool to put together a reproduction of that of the HO 350 and see if how it compares. I'm kind of concerned about how it compares to the other 302, 327, and 350 small block Chevys. I'm kind of curious where it slots in with those. I suspect it's going to be really good. I don't think it's going to be Boss 351 good because it doesn't have the airflow. It doesn't have the head flow to do that. But I think it has enough head flow to hang with a a fuely headed small block. Certainly, it just doesn't have as much camshaft as they do. So again, it will be interesting. I'll be curious to see. Obviously, we know it has a really good intake manifold. If this 400 is any indication. The other thing that I would really like to do on the Pontiac is I would like to run a tri-power on it. Not because I think a tri-power is going to make more power. In fact, I don't think it's going to. But I would like to see what that difference is. Just like with the fuel injection, the L84 327 versus the L76, the dual plane carbureted version of the same motor. I'd like to see what that power difference is and see, even though they didn't offer a tri-power on the 400, we could run it on whatever and see if it's, on a 400, especially if we had something that had a cam or whatever. But we could even try it stock first to begin with and see, is that restrictive even on a stockish 400? Because I think it probably would be restrictive on a more powerful combination. And then ultimately with a 400, I think I would put together a bigger displacement version of that motor and try to make some power with it. So it will be cool. And so we'll wait till we get we're going to get the numbers up over 100, and I'll post the we'll post the poll. Okay. Robert rebuild Pontiacs, cool. I went over to see Oliver today, the gentleman who won the Project Nova with the turbo diesel in it, and that was cool to go visit him. I got to go over to his shop and see lots of cool stuff. A lot of it's all greasy car parts, which is is my jams. So lots of L series stuff. There's lots of cool Nissan stuff. He has a lot of import stuff there. Also has Slant 6 stuff there, and LS stuff, and Ford stuff, and lots of neat things. So we were talking about all types of different things. And the reason that I was there, I'll try to see if I can get this thing fixed again. The reason that I was there is because I brought over a bunch of new suspension stuff for him. So I think it was Mario that sent that to me. So if you're watching, thank you very much for all that stuff. And it's going on the Nova. So new bushings, new control arm, and when I say new, just old stuff. But the bushings are new. So lots of Moog stuff, control arm bushings, idler arms, tie rods, shocks, and springs. I just need to get a set of maybe get him a set of leaf springs, because although he did put helper leaf springs on it, I think from a Jeep, and that seems to be working fairly well. But we're talking about maybe trying different motors in it and taking it to the drag strip. We have to figure out something else besides that Saginaw 3-speed trans. The shifter's bad in it, and it doesn't want to do second gear very well. Also, if we put any kind of reasonable power in it, it's going to break. Oliver has an L49, L69, the HO 305, which is cool, and I'd like to run it. That could also go in his car, but we'll talk about what kind of other power plants that we're kind of thinking of for that, and it would be cool to put it in and take it over to the drag strip, and just play with it. It doesn't matter if it runs 16s. I don't even care about that. All I care about is that it just gets to go out and enjoy itself. It's like if you take it to the drag strip, it's like releasing it into the wild. That way, it wants to keep playing. So we'll talk about that. In fact, let's see, we're 15 minutes in, so we'll we'll post that. So the question is, we were talking about different engine combinations, LS or small blocks or whatever, something weird. We both really want to put the turbo sprint motor in there, which would be very cool. But so should let's see. I'm going to even change that. Should get. Okay, so this will be our poll for today. Should Oliver's Project Nova get a carbureted 8.1 liter big block, because I have one of those, to replace the turbo diesel? And the reason that he wants to replace the turbo diesel is that it has a, I think the rear main seal is leaking, and it's going to be quite a bit of a rigmarole to get that fixed and replaced. And the motor's got to come out anyway, so it might be better to put something else in there, even though the turbo diesel for the giveaway for the project was awesome. I mean, and it's cool because it was a diesel, not a turbo diesel, and then he added a turbo to it, and then did smoky burnouts with it, and put the 6.2 emblems on it. So all of that's like just a big giant win. But the 8.1 also would be other guys' big block, because it's not, it's not your normal. I go get, I've gotten a dozen or so 7.4 liter Gen 6 motors. So let's see what people have to say about the big block 8.1 and a Nova. Every Nova needs a big block, right? You can get 500 horsepower with a 350 heads and cam. Oh, and nitrous. Okay, I was gonna say heads and cam on 350 is a long ways from 500, but with a nitrous, yeah, definitely. Nick, have you done any 425 Olds testing? I haven't. I haven't ever run an Oldsmobile motor on the engine dyno. In your infinite wisdom, for a small block Chevy Junkyard 350 Vortec that eventually wants a turbo, what carb would you use to do both? Looking for 500 horsepower. The, cam and springs, and then a dual plane. I don't know that you could use the, like Quick Fuel has a carburetor for that. We use the CSU carburetor that we've had for years and years and years, and Kevin does really good stuff over there. If you want to do it less expensively, I think a Quick Fuel has I would use an E85 carburetor because, the gas is cheaper, it's higher octane, you can run more boost, all of that is good. I just don't know how well that carburetor is going to work NA, because I've never tried one. Drag race to 6.5 with a bigger turbo. People who said no are hoping. Well, certainly the 1 liter Mafia are hoping for the 1 liter sprint motor. I'm scrolling back to see some of the questions. Jim, 350 HO late 68 and all 69 have screw and studs and 211 valves. Yeah, the 69 I thought got the 400 head on it. 68, early 68 press studs and small valves. Yeah, 70 Pontiac went back to small valves. Yeah, 69 and got the good camshaft too. It got the 068 cam, right? Is the way that I understand it. Robert, I have a 455 6X head tri-power Pontiac. Oh, nice. Cool. And so does everybody want to see a video of Oliver and I putting the suspension stuff on the Nova? I would think yes. I read in a card book by David Vizar, I think that the small holes in the emulsion tubes, like the placement, you can originally leave it out on the bottom or top. Of course, this is a 4150. Not without it affecting somewhere else. At least I haven't seen that. I would like somebody to. Yes, Bob, he does need SS496 emblems. We were talking about that. I have 2 spread bore motorcraft carbs. They can be made to run well. It would need a rear end, definitely. And we were talking about that, shock loading the trans and stuff. And that's why an automatic trans would be better to replace the, like a Turbo 400 would be better to replace the, to replace that Saginaw 3-speed. Yeah, Oliver, I don't know if you want to keep it a manual trans. You're going to shock load stuff. I just think you're going to break more stuff if you do that. Because the 8.1 would eventually have to get a turbo, right? 69 Pontiac got 48 400 head. That's right. At least that's what I read. Yeah, Mike, that would be good too. The a turbo 3800 would be good. And it would be really cool if it was a compound deal, if it was a blower and a turbo. I'm going to use a 4-barrel double pumper carb for turbo without blow through for 10 psi. No, not very successfully. Unless you enclose the whole carburetor in enclosures like Vortec and Paxton sell. I had an EDELBROCK Quadrajet series of my 70 Buick 455. That's right. And my 86 Regal. If you don't have a good fuel pump, you can empty the bowl in the first 60 feet of the drag strip. That's one of the complaints about the Quadrajet, is that the fuel supply or the fuel bowl, the reservoir is not big enough. I'm told that guys cure that with lots of pump, but it would be better if it had more. Do other guys' Olds 455? I haven't ever even seen one of those in the wrecking yard is the problem. Yeah, Jim, I thought, didn't they notch the borers, the top of the cylinders on the 350s for those valves? That's pretty common. I mean, Chevy did that on the 396s too with the big block heads, with the rec port heads. Junkyard CTSV manual. They have those all everywhere, just laying around, right? No power glides. It has to have at least 3 gears. Go ahead and make my day electric fuel pump, solve my problem, the fuel supply to the Q-Jet. That's what a lot of guys are saying, that as long as you have really good fuel supply from the pump, and then everything's okay. Grand Natty, what's up? Cole's Towing. You can maybe do a search on YouTube and see if guys are converting them to blow-throughs. Oliver was doing Oliver, what did you do? It wasn't a Q-Jet, right? Was it an ABS for blow-through? 100 miles an hour first gear of the Glide. Dan, what's going on? For high flow Q-jets, there's larger needle and seat. But the larger needle and seat will help filling the reservoir, but it's not going to change the size of the reservoir. Do you have any 2.3-liter 4-cylinder turbos like the Ford SVO ones and the Turbo T-Birds? I've only run those on the chassis dyno. Put a built Hydro 200 in it. I actually have a 4-speed Hydromatic automatic trans behind the 347 Pontiac motor that I have. So it's an automatic trans, but it has 4 gears in it. Power glide with the gear vendors. It already has a 308 gear, so it's probably got enough cruising gear for it. Uncle Squirrel's in the house. Power glide might be a good transit car. Weighs less than 3,100 pounds. I don't think that car could be very heavy, right? I'll have to weigh it. Try and keep a manual gearbox in it for factory correctness. Pulse should be 110% yes, but we're at 80, so we know that there's 20% of the people here that are always going to be the 20%. Who sells a bushing repair kit for the throttle plate for Q-jets? I don't know. I was just taking tonight. I was just in when I went to visit Oliver. I got a set of the trash can 260Z carburetor from him and the intake manifolds because I want to make that Crown turbo kit. And so I took those apart and was playing with them, getting the throttle linkages and the blades to operating and the slide working and all that stuff. And so we're thinking about using one of those in front of the turbo as the draw through. So it'll be cool if that works. But if not, I'm thinking about having to rebuild one of those, which I've never taken one of those apart, but it'll be cool. When would you say it's okay to modernize a classic, or is it just plain heresy? No, what I say is you should do whatever you want to your car and not care what other people think. I mean, I drove a Chevy Sprint Turbo up to West Tech. That's like big block land over there. Did I care? No. Zero amount. Any chance we'll see a modern 4-cylinder EcoBoost, maybe compared to Hondas? I don't think an EcoBoost compares to a Honda, quite honestly. But we've run those on the chassis dyno, but not on the engine dyno. Let's talk about computer-controlled Q-jets. Oliver has one of those. In fact, the L69 has the feedback carburetor on it, and the HEI is computer-controlled. So this was like the transition from carbureted stuff to fuel-injected stuff, because right during the time that they offered the L69, the HO 305, the HO 5-liter, they also started introducing the TunePort 5-liter. And the L69 had the computer-controlled Quadrajet and the computer-controlled HEI distributor. So it was getting, quasi-fuel injected. If we run that on the engine dyno, which I'd like to, we talked about, we won't run it with that carburetor and distributor. We'll just put another HEI in and put another Quadrajet on it of similar size. because we don't, and we were talking about using a rheostat to control the metering rods lifting out, but you know, it'd be just easier to put a regular Quadrajet on there. Carter Q-Jet bushings differ from Rochester's, and Ford 4029 Quadrajet Q-Jet has filter stud screw on the bottom, not top. Brett Warfish. Do you have another channel? I have only one channel. Do you think 305 heads would be good on a 283? Yes. I think that they probably flow more than a 283 head does, even a power pack head. A power pack head's going to have a smaller valve in it, I think. Yeah, we were just talking about computer controlled ones. Can you replace the 4060E behind a 5.3 with an Allison? Somebody else might know the answer to that. 307 Ols. Mike, you try to build your cars the way most people would like it? No, I don't care about them. Remember, the trick back in the day was use caddy stuff on the computer Quadrajets to fix issues. They were higher quality. Why, Jim? Why did they want the filter stud to go all the way to the bottom? Were they lifting the motor out with the carb stud? There's a 471 blower carb top to put 697s on it. Old school, yep. I was wondering why they ran so many of those carburetors, and then I actually saw them in person. I'm like, oh yeah, that's why. These are really, really tiny. So the metering solenoid is off, so it's in a fixed position when at wide open throttle. That would be kind of nice. There is a computer chip shortage. .30 degrees and dwell. Are they Dan? Is that not pulse width modulated? At wide open throttle, the MCS solenoid is open loop controlled. We like that. Ajax, if you swap to a 4L80 from a 4L60, you need a drive shaft and a tune. I would imagine the transmission's a different length and obviously programming. But is the harness the same? Is the hookup or all the solenoids and stuff on the trans the same? Fixed dwell at wide open throttle. Nice. So my question would be, if we unplug the carburetor, is its default position that fixed dwell, the wide open throttle position? Is an 8.1 intake easy to find? I already have one. I already have the carbureted one. Full rich. That's what we like. We like all the rich. Let's see how our 81%. We just jumped up over 80. So that's like 101. Should Oliver's Project Nova get a carbureted 8.1 liter big block to replace the turbo diesel, the leaky turbo diesel, the leaky Exxon Valdez turbo diesel? It makes me wonder what kind of, so are they adjusting, they have to be adjusting the metering rods in the primary circuit under cruise then, right? In the Quadrajet? Because you would only be cruising under the primary circuit. Yeah, Oliver, you don't have to worry about rust on the Nova anymore. The little round tag 800s. The Cadillacs had those, right? Did the Buick 455 have those as well? Stromberg 97 is really a lawnmower carb. Quick question, Richard. Where can I find a turbo kit for my Ram? I don't know who makes kits. I have my ported head cam headers, but I'm looking to boost it. I may have an old turbo kit for a Dodge, but it's only something we ran on the dyno, so I don't know about it fitting for a specific chassis. An 800 CFM carburetor should easily make enough power to run 10s. Q-Jet versus thermoquad versus Autolite. I don't think you would see, it would come down to more the specific carburetors that you chose. Those would be old W30s had them, okay. Mechanical fuel injection. The Q-Jet with the fuel line that runs straight in or 800s. That's what we had on the Pontiac. Turbo carb big block only if it gets an ultra efficient lawnmower carb. Yeah, for that good cruise fuel mileage. We're going to contact you about the kit. I'll put my email. That's my email address. I just don't know what it is, though. I don't know what it's for. And like I said, we only use it for dyno testing. I've only ever run one thermoquad carburetor, and I liked it. I ran it on the 360 that I had, and it worked really well. Is there such thing as a fuel-injected low-profile intake manifold for a big block Chevy? They have the converted single planes. I don't know how low profile that is. I don't know if they have a low ram like style for a big block. Maybe somebody does. Early turbo and T-types had draw-through Quadrajets. So the ST455s had 800s, but not the HOs and not others. Ron's flying toilet. I don't know. I was never seen one tested. Are there any factory aluminum intakes for the Pontiacs? Does anybody know if any of the Q-Jet? I don't think any of the Q-Jet stuff was aluminum. 6-liter with a Truck Norris cam, 11-to-1. How did you get it to be 11-to-1? Did you put pistons in it or something? And I don't know about the porting on the 799 heads, but I would say, I don't know, something at 500 or less, maybe. Rammer 4 and 455 HO were aluminum intake manifolds. Okay. Did they put Quadrajets on the Clevelands on the later ones? Richard, how'd you limit the centrifugal advance on the HEI? We put in it wasn't a pop rivet. It's actually a nut and a bolt, but it's a nylock nut. Pontiac inline 6 had aluminum intake. Yeah, I wonder how much a Ram Air 4 or an HO aluminum factory intake costs. And I wonder how that intake performs compared to the cast iron versions. Did the Quadrajet have a Q-Jet and the Super Quadrajet had a Holly, or did they both have that? Yeah, that's what, Jim, that's what I thought. Light made most of the Ford type of cars. Don, you have one of which intake manifolds? Video testing the EDELBROCK RPM carb intake versus the RPM EFI. I don't have that up yet because I can't find all the photography for it, but I did run that test. Aluminum Pontiac intake is the same as cast iron, but runner size is larger at the head port. So it's not the same then if the runner port is different. Richard, are you going to Sonoma in a couple weeks? What's happening at Sonoma in a couple weeks? Should put a turbo Atlas in the Nova. That requires a whole standalone fuel injection and fuel injection pumps and wiring harnesses and all kinds of stuff. after you put the bolt and nylock in the HAS retriever, how much was the centrifugal advance limited to? I don't think it went more than about 35 or 40 maybe. Even Chrysler used the Q-jets at the end of their carburetor days. Pete, have you ever done an F-150 351 truck intake versus a carburetor? Well, not a carburetor is not your question. The question would be a carbureted intake, because the carburetor, I mean, it does help because it adds charge cooling, but the intake manifold design is really what, like the test that I did on the 5-liter, the GT40 versus the RPM, that's really an intake test, not a carburetor versus EFI test. I think I covered that in the video, and it would be the same thing for that. I do need to do truck intake tests because I need to do it on a 302 and or a 351 because I just haven't done it in forever. High Ram Triton V10 carburetor. 4.9 liter Pontiac used a huge aluminum spacer plate. That's a completely different. That's a different deck height motor too, though. What carb can you run on a 2.2? Oliver just gave me the 318 2-barrel that is the upgrade for the 2-barrel in the slant 6, so he could run that on the 2.2. How's our test? Wow, our test has dropped down. Our poll: should Oliver's Project Nova get a carbureted 8.1 liter big block to replace the turbo diesel? 77% saying yes, and 23%. All the no's have increased. Larry, why don't manufacturers use TBI and direct injection at the same time? Well, Chevrolet did on the LT5, on the second generation LT5. Not TBI, but TPI and direct injection. Are all 8.1 liter big blocks the same? No, they're not. For our needs, they are, because we're going to take off the fuel injection stuff. Oh, you said yes, but the Triton V10 is your suggested replacement. I do want to run one of those. I'm swapping the turbos on my 5.4 to 3582s. Just got my flanges, so from 50 AR to a 70 AR. Cool. Let me know what happens. What do you think of a 5.3 in a Camaro? The 317 and E85. I just removed the 6.2 for 5.3 forged internals, pistons, rods. Trying to go with turbo setup. So what was this? Why are you not just turbocharging the 6.2 would be my question. And then, not that it makes a big difference, but why are you putting 317 heads on a 5.3? You should just use the heads that came on a 5.3 if you got one from the wrecking yard. Do you remember which intake of EDELBROCK RPM variants did better? Are you asking about the RPM, the EFI versus the carbureted one? I'd have to look up the results. It was done back in Muscle Mustang days, so 20 years ago. Richard, do you understand what the differences are between the different big block designs? Between a Mark IV, a Gen 5, a Gen 6, and a Gen 7? Yeah, the Gen 7 is completely different than the others. My buddy has an early model C4, so that would be an 84 with a crossfire injection. Those are cool. I want to run one of those. Put the RB in the Z. The Z will get an L28 turbo. Max power you'll see with a Q-Jet. Well, there are guys running very low 10s with them, so whatever that takes. Send your camel humps to David Vizard. Is Gen 7 the one to get if you're using a factory style block? I don't know what you mean by factory style. Like, why are you concerned about a factory style block? The Gen 7 is the one that we want to use because I have one, and also because it's bigger than all the other factory ones. Yeah, that's right, Aaron. They should hit the like button. 148 to 82. That's just a little over 50%. Come on, guys. Let's get that like button going. Crossfire was also used in the 82 Corvette and also in the Camaros, in the Z28s. I've not done any LV1 or LV3 builds on those. Did you ever bring your Fox down the quarter mile? I did way back during the Foxtrot. It went 121 or 2 with the Vortec on it and 308 gears and street tires. The Crossfire V8 would still be limited by a couple of things, by several things. The throttle body size, which you could make bigger. You could put the big block ones on there, but even those are not, a tremendous amount of flow. The opening in the manifolds themselves, and then the port sizes. The port sizes where the intake manifold attaches to the cylinder head are just tiny by comparison. I just installed the 5.3 is cheaper than the 6.2. It is. 5.3 getting from the wrecking yard is a lot. What playlist of yours has 4.3 liter V6 videos? I think I have a 4.3. Don't have a 4.3 playlist. If I don't, I'll put one up. Otherwise, it would be in the other guys. Yeah, I've never seen a 6.2 liter in the wrecking yard either. Didn't the Pantera have a Q-Jet? Every Pantera I ever saw had twin turbos on it. The throttle bodies on the Crossfire were pretty small. And the fuel supply was limited too. Yep, and the other guy's stuff. If I have enough, like I just created a Pontiac one, so if I have enough videos, then I'll make a dedicated one for that. What does a low mileage LS3 takeout cost these days? It's thousands of dollars. The problem with LS3s is they were only in a few vehicles. .48 IDAs on the Webers. That would look good too. Eric, I have a friend who has an aluminum 6.2 and his Cadillac Escalade has 403 horsepower stock. They are good motors. Did you ever ride or drive a Pantera? Bring your earplugs. I've sat in them. I don't think I've ever driven one. But yeah, they are loud. And all of the one when we raced out at the Silver State, we used to call it the Pantera Graveyard because it seemed like for years and years, everyone that came out there would end up on the side of the road. They would usually overheat. Grant, you don't have to tell me that you have a question. You should just ask the question. The general, thank you very much. Hey, it doesn't, it's the thought, man. So Ajax, you're familiar with the crossfires? I think I've seen a Pantera that had a modular Ford in it. That was kind of a good fit. Is there Pontiac videos coming? Like the one that I posted today? Don't tread on me. My cousin just started a new crossbar build, a cross ram maybe build, and I just sent him the stream. Shout out to Gabe. All right, cool. Oh, a Mangusta, yeah. I will have more Pontiac videos coming out. Jerry, thanks. Train V10 for bug height spray. It's gonna understeer a little bit. I got to see a lot of really fast Panteras. One of the guys brought his out at the Silver State, and he had like an all aluminum stroker version of a 460, and that thing went over 200. They ended up hurting it a lot, though. Guy that runs 1290s with an 84 Crossfire, head parting cam, full exhaust, and tuning was required. Definitely would be for that. You know, if you were trying to do it in a L69 carbureted version, all of that stuff would be required too. Did the OBD2 make GM put? Did it make GM put the crank sensor on the LT1? No, that's just the best place for it. But let's see, what about you think 317 heads flow more with a turbo setup, but my 5.3 or 85 or 241 or 799? The heads, if I was running a turbo 5.3, I would run the heads that came with the 5.3. That's a 706 or an 862. If you have these other heads and you have 799s or 241s or 317s, they will all work. It's just that with the other heads that have bigger chambers, like the 317, you're going to lose turbo response because you're going to lose power. It makes less power NA than the smaller chamber 862 or 706 head does. Those tests are up, and the head, the one that people think is small, the 706 or the 862 stock 5.3 head, you can make way over 1,000 horsepower with that. In fact, you can make way over 1,000 horsepower with that. So it's not holding you back. You don't need more flow from the head to make the power output, but the smaller head will help with turbo response and stuff. So that's why I recommend that. And the other reason I recommend it is when you get a 5.3 from the wrecking yard, it already has that head on it. You might as well use the one that it came with rather than trying to source another head. Grant, 2006 543 valve F-150. I picked up a P1SE supercharger I like to put on it eventually. It still needs injectors, pump, and other odds and ends. My question is, Will supercharging the engine require the cam phasers to be locked out, or will it work on factory parts? No, the blower will work with the it will work with your variable cam. I wonder if GM wanted to put the did they want to push the engine back farther on the LT1 also? Because the cowl overhung quite a bit. Did they want to lower the distributor? I wonder if packaging played a part in that. Happy to help. We're in a dual jet on an 85 TBI 4.3 liter. Supporting other modifications. Cool. On the 74 Trans Am for sale, but he won't take your cash offer. Usually, whenever I see the the completely done over 69 Camaros or 57 Chevys or any kind of $300,000 or $400,000 car that the guy's bringing to West Tech, I offer him $1,500 cash for it. Some guys get it. Some guys realize what a joke it is, and some guys, you know what this is? I'm like, the tire and wheel that I'm standing next to is worth more than that. That's what makes it such a good joke. It's a joke. Eric, you think the rod ratio is what keeps the Dodge V10 from not making a very good performance engine? Richard, a friend of mine picked up an LS2 aluminum 6-liter block. What cylinder heads would you recommend? Well, an LS2 would have had 243 heads on it, which were pretty good heads. So it depends on what you're trying to do. If it's a factory, if you want to pick a factory head, then I would recommend a Recport, an LS3 or an LY6 head. If it's an aftermarket head, there's about a bajillion choices that are all going to be good. Garth, I've never done an LT1 383 with an LS multi-coil controller. If so, how well does it work? It would work the same as having that same motor. Like I ran an LT1 based motor. It was an L99 with a distributor. I just cut a big hole in the back of the intake manifold and ran a conventional distributor. An individual coil pack like an LS1, individual coils, will do the same thing. It doesn't offer you any benefit if the distributor is working well. What it will do is it'll have better rise time. So if you have misfire and the coil isn't energizing, for some reason, maybe better emissions, that kind of thing. Maybe the coil would run cooler also, but really none of that is a concern on a typical 383 LT1. In the aftermarket heads, again, if you take a look at the video I have up where I tested 10 different sets of heads, they're all covered by 10 horsepower or whatever. There's no bad one. Airflow Research makes good heads. TrickFlow makes good heads. All of the ported versions of the stock heads, the Total Engine Airflows or Texas Speeds or Lingenfelters, almost everybody has a really good program for those. So I don't know what kind of power you're trying to make, but all of those work well. And I have lots of videos up that show you specifically if you put this trick flow 225 head on, or you're going to look at all those heads, because all those heads were, when I did the head test, I think all of those were run on a 6-liter. No, they weren't. They were run on a stroker. When I did the intake test, we ran it on a 6-liter. Working on 85 Cutlass, put new starter and cranks, but fuel. I don't know what that means. Maybe no fuel. Should I rebuild the carburetor, replace the fuel pump? Well, first thing I would do is you should crank it over and make sure you're getting fuel. It might be that you have to prime the fuel system. Maybe the pump is not drawing the fuel from the tank. If it's a carbureted combination, make sure that it has fuel. Or when you're starting it, try spraying brake clean or starting fluid or anything else in the carburetor and see if it fires. And if it does, then you know it's probably a fuel supply issue. So, Mike, you built a 267 small block with a 283 power pack heads and a 292 comp cam. The power pack head just doesn't flow very well. They're really small. Casey, I don't know why Chevy put the distributor where they put it. Not all brake cleaners are flammable. Well, if you're going to try to do this as a test, then you should use the flammable one. I think that kind of goes without saying. So let's we're going to stop our poll here. Dropped all the way down to 74%. One of these days. 74% saying yes, that Oliver should put an 8.1 in his Nova. The 90s LT1, the second gen, is very popular. I actually need to do more testing with it. I need to put together the DZ302 Gen 2 motor. I'd like to see. I wonder if let's check. Well, I don't even know what the casting number is on the 283 head. I know the guys at West Tech are putting together a Fuely, an original matching numbers Fuely 283. So that should be cool. Hopefully they'll run it on the dyno. If you're building an old build, Travado is the go-to guy for stroke, new school, old power. I'm not. I'm actually only interested in stock stuff and mildly modified stock stuff. So, Casey, you think you should put an FE in there? LS3 is overheating with the D1SC because is it because of the stock head bolts? It's not because of stock head bolts. The problem go away with studs? No, that's not your problem. If the head bolts are the problem, that means you've blown a head gasket, and that has nothing to do with the bolt strength. That has to do with tuning that you've detonated it in. And if you've detonated enough to hurt a head gasket, more than likely you've broken something else. If it has a ProCharger on it and it has a big front-mounted air-to-air intercooler on it, chances are you're not getting a lot of flow through the radiator. Turbo peanut port for the Nova. Wow, Don throwing shade on the 255. Let's do the TPI and the HO305s. 1 more minute. Make sure to go watch the video. Go watch the cool Pontiac Quadrajet EDELBROCK intake video. Any potential in a North Star? I have one of those to run. It's waiting for me to run it. $255 for people that think a stock 302 is just too much motor. The 8.1, what the heck did it make? Did it make 400 horsepower or something? Let's find out before I leave. I must know. Go to dyno results, and then big block Chevy. And do I have, I don't know if I have, do I have 8.1 stuff here? 8.1. Finals, part 1. Final with headers. So this 8.1 with headers, we ran all the way down to 2,000 RPM. It made 420 horsepower and 550 foot-pounds of torque. It did good. And then with a turbo on it, let's see. Turbo at 7 pounds, 638 foot-pounds, and 800 and almost 50 foot-pounds of torque. So it did really well. I think that's probably too much for what else is going on there on that Nova. The 8.5 rear end and the tiny little U joints, and certainly the Saginaw trans. So something else would have to be done. Oh, where was the horsepower peak? It's pretty low. It'll be perfect for the 308 gears. Horsepower peak was 4,400. It made the same. And peak torque was at 33 or 34. No. Oh, wow. Peak torque is way up there. 3,600 RPM. Big power. Don't forget they rip threads out of the block. I don't think they do that. I think with Boost it'll be just fine. I think Boost cures everything. Thank you guys all for showing up. I will see you guys all tomorrow. Boom! Got my fan in the background. Look, my one fan.